Thanks so much for inviting me to come and speak, and just really appreciate all the work that's gone into you guys, to your event, and how exciting it is to have another Sedona Wolf Week underway. To Betsy and Paula and all the folks from Apex Protection and Plan B, I'm thrilled to see you guys succeed again in producing such a wonderful event for wolves, and just really appreciate all the work that you've put into all of this. So huge applause from everybody to these guys, because having put on a number of conferences before in the past, I know how hard they are, and I just know how much work goes into all of the making sausages in the background, and it's not easy. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So I am going to start working on sharing my screen, and then see if we can get this slideshow up. So I wanted to start off by saying happy Sedona Wolf Week to everyone. And again, my name is Suzanne Asha Stone. I am the Executive Director of the International Wildlife Coexistence Network, and I'm really excited to be sharing tonight's talk with you. It's a pretty somber topic, and I know that there's a lot of turmoil around killing wolves right now, and I wanted to go into more of a deep dive into why those methods and that going toward killing wolves is really not the solution, that we have to find other ways to coexist with them. And I am going to start off actually with a video, and because I would love to bring in some other voices into this as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment and see if I can pull this up. And I love technology, so I'm really hoping everything's going to work here, but I often also seem really challenged with it at times too. So bear with me just a second here, and let's see if we can't get this up and running. Okay. All right. So I am going to go to starting this and sharing it so you can hear the sound behind it. This is kind of in a labor of love. A lot of people want to help with what's going on in the Northern Rockies, and a lot of my talk tonight is going to be concerning the Northern Rockies, what's happening here, particularly in states like Idaho, where there's just rampant killing going on of wolves. And so with that, I am going to start this video and share this.
One of the things that I'm getting from my grandkids, and some of them are really little, calling me saying, "Pop, they're going to kill all the wolves. They're killing the wolves, Pop. Why is that happening, Pop?"
In states such as Montana and Idaho, wolves can be killed now by shooting, trapping, poisoning, and even the gassing of little pups in their dens is allowed. The suffering inflicted on these sensitive and social animals is terrible to contemplate.
The actions taken by Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming stand in sharp contrast to the milestone achieved 26 years ago, when the American public celebrated the reintroduction of wolves to the Northern Rockies region in Yellowstone National Park and central Idaho.
We must take action now to prevent the second eradication of wolves in the West. We urge the Secretary to immediately enact an emergency relisting of the Northern Rocky wolf population under the Endangered Species Act. You have the power to stop this ruthless destruction of wolves.
I'm a big dog person. Every single species of dog, every single breed has come from the gray wolf.
Imagine your dog caught in a painful trap or snare for days. A wolf's ability to love is no less than our domestic dogs. Wolves are highly intelligent. They love their families. They mourn when they lose a family member.
I am in support of protecting our relatives, our brother the wolf. Asha, we call him in our language. But they're part of our stories and legends that are a very significant part of our culture, ceremony. They're part of life. Please protect them.
Mr. President, as you know, wolves have been demonized since the dawn of mankind. They have this villainous reputation. Truth be told, wolves seldomly interact with humans, and they very rarely take down livestock.
Ironically, one of the most successful examples of a non-lethal approach to wolf livestock conflicts has been running here in the state of Idaho for 14 years, the Wood River Wolf Project. This project is a collaboration of community members, livestock producers, NGOs, and county, state, and federal agencies whose mission is to promote wolf-livestock coexistence.
In 2003, Timberline High School's outdoor club officially adopted the Timberline Wolf Pack, and we have been documenting the biologists on public lands ever since. Since the enactment of Senate Bill 1211, we have witnessed the inhumane slaughter of our innocent wolf pups and almost every individual in the Timberline Pack. Their senseless murders were both unethical and barbaric.
This approach to wolves is not fair to human rights. If the eradication of wolves continues, it will be a major black eye on the future of the American public's perception of hunting.
What's happening now in Idaho and Montana isn't hunting. It is pure, unbridled cruelty. Anyone who participates is no hunter and certainly no sportsman or woman. Any individual or organization that doesn't speak out in clear opposition is no conservationist.
When I heard that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is planning a 12-month review of the effect of delisting wolves in the Northern Rockies, I was horrified.
With appropriate management and protections.
Emergency listing under the Endangered Species Act can stop this cruelty cold. It gives you and your federal agencies time, 240 days, to host an inclusive conversation.
Science tells us that we must manage our relationship with wolves differently, that killing wolves destroys family groups and undermines pack stability, which can lead to even more conflict.
This persecution of wolves shouldn't be happening, especially not on our federal public lands. Our land should be managed based on good science, not 19th century brutality.
This is not just mismanagement. This is ecocide. Scientific evidence shows us that the eradication of a keystone species radically weakens the functioning of the entire ecosystem, of which we are a part of. President Biden, Secretary Haaland, what we do here affects us all. The world is watching. What is our legacy going to be?
Without these predators, we don't have a proper balance to the ecosystem. And the more that they're destroyed, the worse it's going to be for our planet. So please, we're asking you, get involved and help stop the unnecessary hunting and poaching of these important predators. Thank you, Mr. President. I know that our words will be heard. Wolves need us to howl for them.
Wonderful, thank you guys. And then I'm going to grab in here and get to this PowerPoint. Oops, probably turn off the video. There's another one starting. There we go. And let's see. Okay, sorry if this is whiplash for you guys. I am going to go back to the right screen. Just make sure you're not watching another video here. All right. So, happy Sedona Wolf Week again. We have a topic at hand that is a tough one, but I am going to talk with you more about why killing wolves isn't the answer, and how you can be an advocate in helping us stop the slaughter of wolves, especially in places like the Northern Rockies, where we're in a free fall, where our house is burning down because of the slaughter of wolves coming here again and what you can help do about it. So maybe if we take a step back and just look at, the reactions that people have to wolves. It is, for those of us who have studied wolves, who understand their behavior, who may have a dog at home, there's this understanding of wolves that's more intimate, that we understand when they're playing, when they're growling, when they're doing play vows or submissive behavior. We can see all of those things in our dogs. And so being able to see those activities happening in wolves, those actions, those behaviors, probably even more so in wolves because they're one of the most communicative type of species in the world. They do most of their communication through their nonverbal or at times verbal behavior, very intelligent on that social level scale. And then for others who don't know wolves very well, they can take and see pictures like this black wolf on the right and see that, it is a matter of context because you're interpreting the wolf and what is that wolf actually doing here. That wolf is actually yawning. And so it is in the midst of a yawn and looks pretty vicious because its teeth are out. But, our teeth are out when we're yawning as well. And in fact, all animals, when they're yawning, do the same thing we do and pretty much show what's going on in their mouth. Even from the time that we don't have teeth, it can be, another type of way of expressing ourselves. So knowing the context of what's going on with this wolf is really important, and helping people understand that, that animal that they perceived probably because of things that they read about them or heard about them from an early age, especially things like the stories that we heard as young children. We are very able to absorb things on an emotional scale as a child. And as children, we tend to relate that, and it's deeply embedded in our psyche. It has an emotional memory to it. So all that propaganda that we were exposed to in Western culture about wolves also kind of reinforces that negative attitude toward wolves. And even when we know better, we may have a visceral response that is, it's not a logical one, but because it's so deeply embedded at an emotional level, that we have that distrust or even fear of wolves that resonates with us at that level. And so we really encourage people to think about the reading materials that they're giving kids, and hopefully more and more of them are less about the big bad wolf and more of them are about the actual wolves and their own stories, because what we have burdened them with is something that comes within Western culture, but it's not unique. It is unique to Western culture. It's not indicative of all cultures. This is a quote from a friend of mine from the Nez Perce tribe, and he was a wonderful advocate for wolves. It says, in the time of wolves' absence, the tribe suffered a vital link in our sacred circle has been broken, and that with the recent return of wolves to Idaho, the Nez Perce have been given back some of their medicine, back. And I heard that from a number of elders when we were working on trying to bring wolves back in the 1990s. I was on the wolf reintroduction team for Idaho and helped with the care of wolves up in British Columbia, and then helped with releasing them in central Idaho. So watching the elders go through and do blessings for the wolves was really important to understand the cultural differences. So again, the topic of the title of my talk is Why Killing Wolves Isn't the Answer. You can see the pictures here are pretty similar. One's from on the right from 1887. The other one is from 2014. Looks like a lot hasn't changed in that period of time. And right before, actually a couple decades after this picture on the right was taken, wolves were completely eradicated from the western United States through traps, poison, snares, shooting them. They even burned wolves as witches in our country because the vehemence was so deep toward wolves, and they had really vilified this animal to the point where there was no rational explanation for that type of deep-rooted hatred. We don't express that kind of feeling toward mountain lions, bears, and other species, or at least we tend not to as a society, but somehow the wolf has become the scapegoat for all of those really negative feelings. So let's go back and think about now, what does the science tell us? You know, what are we learning from science about wolves, and how can that better inform our understanding of the species, what they do, why they do it, and how actually even the science can tell us a lot about us, as, you know, our own actions, social science, behavior, and why we have these kind of reactions. But look at just the basic science, and this came out of early work by Bob Bechstedt and Bill Ripple, and then later with Doug Smith and other researchers from Yellowstone National Park. A lot of research coming out of Yellowstone has helped inform our understanding of wolves. So we know that before wolves were in the park, that there was a real big overpopulation. The park was actively working on trying to kill as many elk as possible. There was a late winter hunt that included killing pregnant elk to try to bring the numbers of elk down in the park, because without wolves there, the population had exploded. We were seeing major loss of cottonwoods, willows, and vegetation that provided habitat for other species. And as wolves have come back and they're established, we're seeing new. And wolves are a factor in this. They're certainly a driving factor. They're not the only factor. So I think, just in understanding that they're adding to this resilience and strengthening of the ecosystem. We're seeing aspen return, fewer coyotes in the park, often because coyotes have a stronger impact on animals like pronghorn. And with wolves being back, the coyote population has shifted to more of a balanced with its own ecosystem. Beaver have come back, which is remarkable to see that happen. I mean, wolves have really only been back on the landscape since the mid-1990s, but we're seeing all of this ripple effect of having them back, and what does that mean for other species, and how does that strengthen the ecosystems, and being able to understand that in a way that we can help explain that to the public is really important. Wolves are playing a major role in helping things like culling disease from elk and deer herds. I mean, they're one of the key species that is capable of doing that in a manner that helps protect elk and deer herds over time, helps strengthen those populations, and protects them from devastating disease, which to me they are almost like the vaccine, against things like chronic wasting disease and other things that can take hold in populations when elk are stagnant and the herds are stagnant in a way that they're spreading disease very quickly, which is something that wolves tend to push them around more across their landscape and keep them moving in healthier ways. We've learned more about human tolerance, that we know that wide-ranging large predator species are declining around the world, and that those declines are for a variety of causes, but that there are direct human causes of mortality are really the predominant reasons for those declines. And so we're trying to tease out now, the scientists of what promotes tolerance, and how do you build tolerance into a system or a reaction for people so that you can succeed in predator conservation efforts. And these factors are not well understood yet. There's always been some attitudes that if you allow wolves, for example, to be hunted, that there will be an increase in tolerance toward the species. And what the research has showed us is that even as liberal as Idaho has gone from doing things like, first off, adding the first stage is trap wolves in the country, and then snaring, and then adding more and more permits. We added about 8 years ago, a bounty system, which I never thought I'd ever see in my lifetime. And so Idaho's been offering $1,000 bounty, which is also, it includes killing pups in dens and paying up to $1,000 bounty on those pups as well. They've extended trapping seasons, hunting seasons, made it year-long in many areas. They allow for 15 hunting tags and 15 trapping tags, which now we're seeing in Montana. The number of tags are growing there for hunting and trapping, and to the point where it is just turning back into this eradication effort for wolves here in Idaho, and it's bled now over into Montana, which is having its first bounties on wolves, trapping and snaring this year for the first time, and we're seeing a really significant impact to the population. So even though they've had this liberalizing of killing the wolf populations, and sometimes 30 to 40 to 50% of the wolves that are out there, it didn't slow down. It didn't build a tolerance in people. What it did is it seems to have generated more intolerance. And so this year we saw the passage of Senate Bill 1211 in Idaho, which takes away all protections for wolves. And so there's no limit on the number of wolves that could be killed. There's no regulation in terms of their number of take. And people can kill wolves in any way that they can kill coyotes, which are considered vermin in the state. So it is not produced more tolerance for wolves. What it seems to have done is just open the door, and this flood of anti-wolf stuff is taken over. And now the state of Idaho is working on trying to eradicate as many wolves as possible in the state. The original Idaho Wolf Plan was one of two plans that was adopted or approved by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And as soon as the Fish and Wildlife Service stepped away from the table, the state of Idaho eliminated, they dumped the second plan, which called for higher number of wolves, and then returned back to their own 2002 plan that calls for 150 wolves in the state from about 1,500. The science also tells us that some of the reasons that they give for trying to kill wolves, which livestock protection is one of the most important one that tends to be brought up, that killing wolves is not the solution to livestock conflicts. In Idaho, we have started over now 14 years ago, one of the largest examinations and testing of non-lethal methods on a large landscape, with about 20 to 25,000 sheep in our project area and some of the most rugged country anywhere in the United States, probably in North America. It's incredibly rugged country on national forest lands. And we have those sheep are present out there from about late May till about mid-October. And then we've used non-lethal measures to help protect the sheep from wolf predation. We know that, like in areas adjacent to us, that where they've been using killing wolves, that their methods have not protected more sheep. In fact, I'll go into more detail about it. But this case study is something that we've been applying, these non-lethal deterrents. They include things like light devices, sound devices, knowing where the wolves are and helping to monitor those populations, and then changing up the types of methods that we're using to help protect the sheep. And so we're testing and utilizing these practical non-lethal tools, and they are, we're always adding new tools to our list. We're always looking for new ways of better honing our skills and being able to provide protection for the livestock while they're out on public lands. And these methods are not just working with wolves, they're working with a broad scale of predators. So they're seeing fewer losses to coyotes, to bears, to mountain lions. It's across the board. And they're not difficult methods. Monitoring wolves in our project area can be pretty difficult, as you can see from this image. We don't have many radio-collared wolves. In fact, I don't know if we've had any in the last 5 years in our project area. So we have to rely on other things like tracks, scat, reports from the public, howling surveys, all of that kind of thing to help us monitor where the wolves are and where they're going for denning season, where they go for rendezvous time when they're raising their pups. It's pretty tough, rugged country to work in, and it's huge. It is a matter of trying to use all the available tools. We've discovered that using multiple livestock guardian dogs, many of them, 4 to 5 per band, and bands can be anywhere from about 1,500 to 2,000 wolves is really important. And so the livestock guardian dogs are working effectively to help us with doing, protecting those bands while they're out in the country. We also are using citizen scientists to help us to monitor the wolf population, so lots of field cameras that are out there, and we're helping students learn how to be scientists in their early stages, and they're helping us go through the data and establish where wolves are located in our project area. So this is where the project area is in central Idaho. The circle around the 4 It's a typical year for us. The 20 to 25,000 sheep we have in our project area every year, we lose typically about 4 to 5 sheep. And as you can see in the areas outside of that, where they're using the lethal control, almost exclusively relying on lethal control of wolves, they're going in and killing a lot of wolves, sometimes entire packs, that they actually still lose a lot more sheep in those areas than we do in our project area. And we're spending less money to implement these measures. So overall, they are 3.5 times more effective than the reliance on using the killing of wolves. So it's actually cheaper and it's more effective over the long term, especially to use non-lethal as the approach that coexisting with wolves is a better solution than killing them. Our project just finished year 14 this year. We did the first write-up on the first 7 years of the project, which is in the Journal of Mammalogy, and I'll share that in a link with you guys at the end. We're also working with cattle operations around the country. This is one that we're excited about. We just partnered with the Voyageurs Wolf Project this year, and this is in the Voyageurs National Park. There's only one ranch left in holding in this entire park, and they raise cattle there. And this is a fence going in as one of the deterrents that's going to help us to better protect the wolves on one side and the livestock on the other side of this private land ranch in holding there. So we're excited to test this out, and after years, decades of hundreds of wolves dying because of the conflicts of this one particular property, we're hoping that these methods are going to help us succeed in stopping that in the future, and it looks good so far. We're also working with other ranchers around the country. There's lots and lots of great examples of others who are doing this way independent of us. The Blackfoot Challenge in Montana has been working for both wolves and grizzly. The Tom Miner Basin Project, just outside Yellowstone National Park. The list goes on and on. So let's just summarize then, what does science tell us? So killing wolves promotes not only intolerance toward wolves, it actually leads to more illegal killing of wolves, and that was in the research from the first paper that I scanned over. And it also then not only it promotes illegal killing, it doesn't lead to increased tolerance, as we're seeing in the state of Idaho right now and Montana. In fact, the emphasis on killing wolves seems like it just creates more and more emphasis to kill more wolves. And what we're saying is that the science is telling us that is not the answer, that finding a way of coexisting with wolves is far better. We know that killing wolves does not result in fewer livestock losses. It goes the opposite. And if you look at even places where they're killing elk and wolves because of trying to increase elk and deer populations, then the science is telling us in those situations as well that habitat is the driving factor and not wolves. And so as much money as you can possibly pour onto the killing of wolves in those areas, it's not going to affect the elk and deer populations in places where the habitat is so poor that it can't sustain them. And then we know that killing wolves destabilizes wolf packs and their populations, as we saw in Wisconsin this last year, and that it has a serious impact on reproduction, but it also has a way of causing a lot more dispersal of wolves into places sometimes where they're not safe to go. So what does nature tell us about wolves? We know that wolves play a beneficial role in the ecosystem, that they add to the resilience of all ecosystems that they're present in, and that they are influencing elk and deer herd use of the landscape in a positive way that helps create more habitat for other species. Wolves are one of the key species that culls diseased and dying prey, and that's an ecosystem service that is pretty spectacular, that we don't often give them credit for, but is one of the things that they are the most capable of doing, and it's because of their incredible sense of smell. The number of wolves on the landscape is driven by the quality of habitat. So those folks that want to drive wolf numbers down to only a few hundred in the state of Idaho are fighting a pretty uphill battle, because the habitat here for wolves really encourages the species to to be at much higher numbers. We know that in the Northern Rockies, for example, at one point there were tens of thousands of wolves here, and we have 3,000 to 5,000 mountain lions, 20,000 black bears just in the state of Idaho, over 100,000 elk. So only tolerating a few hundred wolves is about human prejudice. It's not about science. I think we have to always talk about what is our own heart tell us. We know that killing wolves is taking the life of an incredibly intelligent species that has emotional life as well, and that cares deeply for its family. We see from the videos of people trapping wolves out there that the pack tends to stay behind and howl for those animals that are lost. They feel that pain of separation and loss. The mass killing of wolves is deeply rooted in misinformation, propaganda, and bias. The Idaho State Legislature didn't consult with anyone from the other side before, from wolf conservation or wolf science, before launching this mission of theirs to kill, most of the wolf population in the state. And as humans, we need to find a new way forward, and we need to find a way of living nature rather than working against her. So I know the question will come up, well, what can we all do to help wolves? And there's going to be a lot of answers this week. There's a lot of things that people can do to help in a number of ways. Learning more about them as you're doing here at Sedona Wolf Week. But we have a window of opportunity right now that's going to close soon, and that's with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They have opened up comment period to ask about consideration of relisting wolves in the Northern Rockies. And what we want to do is have everybody ask them to stick to their word. They said, if a state changed their regulatory framework to authorize the unlimited and unregulated taking of wolves, the condition we had previously determined threatened a wolf population, emergency listing would be immediately pursued. We are asking them. Idaho has authorized unlimited and unregulated taking of wolves. Montana's in the process of doing the same thing. It is time for emergency relisting for wolves. So please tell others, share the video. There's lots of great resources out there for you. And if you go to any of those websites, it can help you to learn more about how you can get take action right now to present your own comments to them and ask for protection of that wolf population. We need federal intervention right now because we don't want to see the second eradication of wolves being wiped out of the Northern Rockies. And I think I have time for questions at this point, so I will stop there, pause. There's a few more things I wouldn't mind sharing towards the end, but let's see if we can get some questions to start off with.
Absolutely, Suzanne. In fact, we're caught up. We're ahead of schedule, which is great. So thank you so much. I know there's some questions in the chat that they're going to feed me, but I had one. You've been doing this for a very long time, and I haven't. And I got to tell you, just these recent events of the last year can be incredibly, it can create compassion fatigue and be incredibly draining. And I'd like to know, how do you personally carry on? And the second part of that question may be, because you've been doing this for so long, what do you do personally to carry on? And then it seems to me what you may have been talking about 20 years ago is still what we're talking about today. So that's got to be also incredibly frustrating and draining as an advocate. So maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
Oh, you asked really hard questions. I think we should have taken somebody else's words. So it is, self-care is incredibly important. This is a time when you are expending so much energy emotionally. Last week, for example, I sat for almost 3 hours in discussion with the board president for the Foundation for Fish and Wildlife, for Wildlife Management, excuse me. They're the group that is paying bounties on wolves, and tried to have a conversation with him about why we are so appalled at what's happening. He wasn't even aware that they were paying bounties on newborn pups, that people were pulling them out of den sites and turning them in for bounty. And it wasn't I mean, he at first said that, you know, he would never support that. And it's like, well, your group's paying for it. I can show you where they're paying for it. So he just wasn't even aware of to the depths of where this is going right now. And it's those kinds of, I mean, I just don't know what it would take to be the kind of person that can walk up to an animal like this, you know, raid their dens, or have them in a trap and let them sit there for hours in just sheer terror that goes on. And you know, how do you, I don't understand. So I have to be able to step away from this stuff because all of us feel the pain of it. And I think stepping away means sometimes getting completely away. This summer, I spent 4 months on a boat in central, in the UK, and just spent it with my family and just kind of being out in nature the whole time and just trying to restore, because I knew that this battle was coming. And it's really, right now, I mean, we're on the knife's edge of how this can go. That Deb Haaland hasn't responded so far. President Biden hasn't responded so far. The Fish and Wildlife Service is dragging their feet. There's no excuse for that. And it's the only thing that can be happening is that there's a lot of political maneuvering going on behind the scenes that make it difficult for them to have the courage to move forward. And so I think we have to be louder. We have to be stronger, and we have to be in more numbers to you know, bring all of those voices. So it's about living in community, helping support each other. You know, there's people that I am friends with in the wolf advocacy teams where, you know, they'll come in and just say, "I'm done. I can't do this today. You know, can you take over?" And you know, it's for all of us to kind of wrap our arms around these people and say, take a break. You know, being on the front lines is really hard. And it, you know, it is, we've got to do our best to help support each other. And even if we have differences of opinion and how we get there, the one thing that our opposition does quite well is they are in solidarity, and they support each other. There's very little fissure between them. That, you know, for us, we have to find a way to get there too. That we have to approach this as one community and do everything we can, from Senator Cory Booker to Jane Goodall, to all of us that are, you know, part of this Sedona Wolf Week. We all have a role to fill, and in being able to find that role, and even if there's just a small one, collectively, that makes a huge difference. So take care of yourself, get out in nature, take breaks when you need it, and recognize that sometimes if you've gone too far, that you might even need a bigger break, like going to spend 4 months on a boat. So, yeah, thanks, Betsy. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry, you asked about restorative stuff.
Yeah, you actually pretty much covered it. You know, I was just commenting the things that you've seen. So for me as an advocate, I, you know, look at what's going on today, and it feels like it's been the same story that's been going on for decades. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as someone who's actually experienced all of that, I'm sure you've seen it. We're hopeful, I guess, in some of the events that are coming, as long as we keep being a voice. There was a question that said that after the December 15th U.S. Fish and Wildlife comment period ends, you know, is there some kind of guesstimate, if you will, on when a decision would be made?
Yeah, that's why we're asking for emergency relisting right now, because if the service waits, like Jane said, if they wait the full 12 months, there will be wolf pups on the ground again in April and May. And if they wait that long, those pups are going to get, I mean, they're easy targets. There's, you know, they're so vulnerable. And so we hope that the service will do what they said they were going to do and do an emergency relisting of wolves. They will have then a 240-day period to have consultations, sit down with the states, and say, what can we do about restoring the state wolf management plans that you agreed to uphold, but that you just decimated this year. The states completely violated their own promises to the federal government. And if we don't do that, if the service doesn't do that, I'm afraid that we will see in our lifetime the second eradication of wolves from the West, at least, especially from places like Idaho and Montana and Wyoming. Because if Wyoming, as Idaho goes, so goes Montana. As Montana goes, so goes Wyoming. They often try to outdo each other on who could hate and kill more wolves. So it is essential that we get the protections now restored. And if you go to our website at realistwolvesnow.org, there's a direct link on how you can make public comments. There's a direct link on how you can share the video, where you can send your letters to Secretary Holland and to President Biden. And I mean, it is all hands on deck right now. We can't let anything stop us or slow us down. This has to be a rallying cry, at least for the next 30 days. And if we can't get it done in the next 30 days, it does not bode well for wolves here in the Rockies.
Yeah, your comment about seeing the second extinction of the species, at least in where you are in the Northern Rockies, definitely rings true for so many. So yes, we just have to keep fighting and keep going and take those breaks when needed, so we can only be stronger afterwards. Absolutely. I just admire. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oops. Oh, just if you triggered something. There is an opportunity coming up in the next week or so, and that is with the nomination in the Senate confirmation for Martha Williams as the new director of Fish and Wildlife Service. And so there are at least 4 senators that have signed on to Senator Booker's and Senator Peters' letter asking her for restoration of the endangered species protection for wolves. Padillo is one. I have a list somewhere. I'll try to find it while I'm on with you guys. And then, but if you have any representatives, especially like in California, can reach out and ask them to ask her about, upholding the service's commitment to emergency relist wolves under the circumstances that are occurring right now. That would be another great way for advocates in those states to help try to make a difference, hold her accountable.
Great, and if you don't find it right now, what we will do, Suzanne, is we'll be sure to put it on our social media pages as an action alert to those people who can contact their senators and see if they can get some movement there. I see you posted the link. Great. Okay. And let's capture that link. I've got lots of people helping out on this call. Let's capture that link so we can turn it into ongoing calls to action. We have about 15 minutes left before we have a little dinner break. You said you wanted to share some final thoughts.
Well, I think that there are so many different opportunities for people to get engaged. What we're seeing happening to wolves is not just happening in the United States. I know you guys had an international forum this morning, and we're seeing in places where the intolerance is growing, where they're starting to rely on killing wolves rather than using non-lethal measures, is leading to more and more intolerance. And that's even happening in places where we had high hopes for, like Germany, in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland. I mean, all these places are kind of a first generation of living with wolves on the landscape. And that's the toughest time of trying to get some type of coexistence management structure in place. Because if they follow this down the rabbit hole, killing more and more wolves, then they're going to come to the same places that we've come to in the Northern Rockies. And the same thing is true for Colorado as well. I'm huge concerns for what's happening in Colorado right now, just because a lot of the structure that they're using for developing a Colorado wolf management plan is the same structure that they used in Montana, the same one thing that they used in Oregon and Washington, and to some extent in Idaho, and a lot of the same advisors that are participating and helping that. So as much as we also don't like seeing what's happening in Eastern Washington, in Oregon, in other places. It is, we can't expect to have a different outcome if we don't have a different structure going into it, different mindset and different expectations of what is needed in order to live in peace with wolves.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a wonderful way to end the presentation, Suzanne, actually, on that note. Unless you have any last thoughts, but yeah, we must continue on. And I have to say, I really admire you for doing this for decades. It takes a lot of strength to do this work. So thank you, and thank you for being part of Wolf Week this year.
Oh, I'm very happy to do it and take inspiration from the people around me, including you, Betsy, because you are rocking it. And so as I see new people coming in, and you've been around for a while, but as you know, even just the students that are coming in, working with this high school class, I mean, how can you not be inspired by those people? They are, they're the new lights. And so we got to do everything we can to help support them.
Absolutely. That's why I love what Apex does so much, because they're starting with the children and the young adults and